all about writing with Ben and Sara.
Hello and welcome to All About Writing, the podcast that covers everything about the world of writing from the inside out. This is episode 25, part 4 of our series on the business of writing. I'm Sara, here with my co-host Ben, who is an award-winning best-selling author and ghostwriter, editor, and publisher.
And I'm Ben, here with my co-host Sara, who is an award-winning best-selling author, screenwriter, editor, and TED Talk presenter. Today we're talking about how to work with an editor, and once again we're joined by our good friend and veteran editor, Michelle Robinson. Michelle, welcome back.
Hi Ben, hi Sara. Thank you very much for having me back on the show.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's great to have you here. Great to have you here. We're going to be diving into a bit of a touchy topic today for some authors. Is how do you work with an editor? Like how do you give up this precious thing that you've worked on so much and hand it over to a professional, and now that professional has something to say? And so how do we deal with that? So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. We're all authors, so we all know what it's like to be on the other side. So we'll hope not to get too fiery as we deal with our own memories.
No.
Anyway, well,
you bribe your editor, Ben. You bribe them with jewels, your firstborn, and a lot of wine, and then they say your book's amazing and your life is fine. That's the real.
Is that how this is supposed to work? Oh, I wish I knew that earlier.
Yeah. Oh man, I've been a chump editor, actually doing work all this time. So, all right, cool. Okay, well that's good to know, and that's our show for today, folks. Okay.
It's just okay. Go. But anyway, Michelle, in all seriousness, I'd love to know, when you say or think of yourself as an editor, what does that mean? What is your role in an author's life as their editor? What are your goals?
Ooh, great question. I would say that I see my role as something more of a coach or a counselor, somebody who's providing guidance, but on a very specific topic, and that topic is the book. So I'm there to point out what you're doing really well with your writing, what is working really, really well with the book, what kinds of things we want to rely on and kind of work on, what things we want to lean on, and then using those strengths, how can we bring up other parts of the book so that they all match? So if you're to think of it as a, sorry, I'm having a mind blank on what you call a sports coach. There we go. So somebody working with you on a sport, are you really good on the offense, defense? Do you work as a team player or solo? And then your coach is giving you guidance on how to integrate that into your game.
Yeah. I just realized a connection here. This is a really interesting triad of people we've got, because I have been Sara's editor when she's an author, and Michelle has been my editor as an author. So it's sort of like we've got this little thing going on here where I've been on both sides with the two people that I'm on this call with. So it's good fun. Yeah, Michelle and I just went through an edit just a few months ago, actually, in the latest novel.
You did, yeah.
And I have worked with Sara on several novels as her editor. And yeah, I if I can, just Michelle, just for a second, just jump in. I totally agree with what you're saying about being a coach. And, sometimes as a coach, you've got to give critique, which can be sometimes interpreted by the author as criticism, but it's never meant that way. It's always meant as critique. I do remember on one of Sara's books, I think not the last one, but the one before Sara, when we had to work on plot. And I believe I opened my critique with, now, I love you, but, and we went from there. And just to try and caution it, because I was going to come down pretty hard on something, but it was meant just to make the book better.
It was, and the So I don't mean to make you like rewrite the whole book, but you have to basically rewrite the whole book. Um,
But it's a really interesting point because I mean, Michelle had some feedback for me on the last book about how to introduce characters and when to introduce characters because there were quite a few being introduced quite early, and and that's hard to take because the book's all put together, and if I have to delay introducing that character, that changes that scene, and so
And you just love those characters interacting in that scene.
that's such an awesome scene. So sometimes as authors we can see it, and sometimes we can't.
right.
Um,
Right.
but I think as an editor, our job is never to rewrite the book, but it's just to show the author how can your vision come through more clearly. And Michelle, back to you. Sorry, I'm done.
Well,
No, this is all great.
and I would say too, I mean, I think that's why we talk about, you talked about it in the previous podcast we did with you too, but like the rapport between the author and the editor is important. I mean, it can be done very kind of clinically, I think, especially as things go further on where it's like you forgot these 16 commas and misspelled these 8 words, fix them and it's about done. Like it can be clinical, I know, but I think especially the first, heavier lifting parts of the editing process, it does help to have really good rapport with your editor, or at least be on friendly terms, even if it's still professional, because it does make those conversations less fraught with awful feelings. So I think, when you're working with an author, how much do you interact with them? Like, is it all just Zooms? Is it emails? Is it, you know, writing the byline, and the lining on and sending the document and being like, fix these things? What kind of interaction should not be expected, but it's kind of more the common thing between editors and writers?
Yeah, what's the norm?
Yeah.
Well, writing and editing, they are written mediums. And as such, I usually like to have a lot of written communication back and forth with my authors. And I do know that that's fairly common as well. So authors can expect to have a lot of emails, sometimes even writing up documents. So, for instance, at the start of an edit, if you're talking about the heavy lifting of the structural stuff, there might be a sort of letter to the author where you've written out, as the editor, I've written out what kinds of things the author can expect. What strengths are we relying on? What things do we need to kind of tie in together? And sometimes even just bouncing back and forth ideas of, okay, this is one direction that I see that you can develop, but I want to hear from you, the author. What were your intentions for developing this? Or is this coming out of left field for you? You didn't even consider this. And what other kinds of suggestions can I provide?
Sure. That makes sense. I mean, Ben and I usually do Zooms. This last time where I actually sent an edit to him for a screenplay we're working on, it's all just kind of been some Zooms, some written stuff. I've worked with different editors where it's all written or it is a phone call and not a Zoom, and it's very different. And so I think it's good for people to know it kind of is going to come in all shapes and sizes, but it's going to be a very involved working relationship.
It is. You can expect it to be back and forth. And if both you and your editor are comfortable with Zoom or phone calls, then those are definitely options. You do usually want to have some form of written communication to back it up as well. So, for instance, if you have questions for your editor, send them to them via email or through a document, or even in line in the document first. That way, your editor can look at that exact spot, chapter 6, paragraph 5, or whatever it happens to be. They can sit on it, ruminate, come up with ideas. And then you guys can get on that Zoom call and talk back and forth, bounce forward those ideas, or even just get that more natural feeling of ask a question, get an answer.
That's great.
Now, here's a good question, which I think every author is going to be wondering about. Does an author have to accept what an editor tells them?
Yes, those are very good questions, and it's something that I get asked all the time when we're first starting. I will say no, but with a caveat. So, no, you do not have to take exactly what your editor says. If you don't agree with either a direction that they're developing your book in, or if we're talking about something smaller scale, if you don't agree with the way that they're suggesting a rewrite to be taken on, it is just that, a suggestion. However, it's usually a good idea to think of the reason behind why your editor is suggesting this change.
Mhm.
Is it because something is unclear for a reader? Well, that's definitely something that you want to still clear up, even if you don't like the way that the editor has suggested it.
Mhm.
So if you don't like their solution, that's fine. They're just there to give you new ideas, to give you that insight that, hey, this might be a little confusing, or, or maybe this dialogue doesn't feel authentic to this other character. Then it's up to you as the author and as the expert in your book to be able to say, okay, I don't like the way that you've rewritten this character's dialogue, but I can see how I would rewrite this character's dialogue and take the idea behind the suggestion.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's really important for authors to understand that the editor can only work with what's actually on the page, not what's in the author's mind, right? Because, like you said, sometimes the author hasn't been clear when they were writing a scene or getting a point across. The editor can only understand what they saw there. It doesn't make any sense to make a suggestion. So, no, it's a great point. You may not like the suggestion, but there's a reason why that suggestion was made. So let's go back to
Yes.
that. Yeah, no, very much so. I guess related to that, as an editor, how willing are you to push a suggestion? Like if you make a suggestion and the author's, nah, you got that all wrong, I'm carrying on. How willing are you to go, let me come back to this and maybe from a different angle and attach it again? Like how do you handle that aspect of the relationship?
Oh, oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it is important to know what hills you're willing to die on and which ones are just, molehills and let them pass. So a part of that is going to be how important is it to the story? Is it just one little bit of dialogue back and forth, or just one small piece of suggestion in a nonfiction book that, okay, that might not get across to a reader, but it's not that important if it does? But if it's something that's crucial to the scene, if the climax isn't really hitting home the way you want it to, or a important point about a important concept about a self-help book, you're not communicating that well with your audience. As an editor, yes, I probably will try to reinforce that suggestion, but by taking it at a different route. So that's part of why communication is so important between your author and your editor, to be able to communicate that, no, I'm not really happy with this suggestion. And then for your editor to say, oh, okay, how about if we do it this way? We can still accomplish these goals, but in a way that you might be a bit more open to.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
I that raises an interesting question too for me when it comes down to, how much do you push and how much do you just say, I'm hands off and things like that. Does it come down to, I mean, is it and this is something we've talked about, and I'd like an editor's opinion. Like, to me, I feel like to be successful in this industry, whenever you're working with anybody in a collaborative process of editing or book cover design or anything like that, that the author has to be open-minded and willing to not kill their darlings per se, but understand that a second set of eyes, a professional set of eyes, they might not be right, like you're saying, it might not be exactly how it has to carry out, but that willingness to walk in open and saying, do with this what you will, is kind of a secret sauce to success in this industry? Or do you feel like, no, it's worth sticking to your guns a lot? What's the better attitude to work with an editor, in your opinion?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think I would go with the former there. Yes, being open to collaborate, because it's a long and lengthy process. I mean, even just to get to the stage of needing an editor, an author's been working with their book for often years. And then it's not going to be, published the next day. It's going to take more time to further develop that. And you've already put so much time into it. It's worth putting in more effort to develop it further and being willing to be flexible in seeing what that professional can bring to the table and how they can either provide another point of view or just elevate it to that next level so that you'll be able to connect with even more readers.
Thank you. I just, Ben and I talk about it, and I just wanted to see if someone else had a differing or similar opinion about, the attitude of working, collaborating. And I think it's the same kind of mental place you should be in, whether you're writing a book or a novel or a self-help book or a screenplay. That collaborative mindset is truly important and will get you further, I think, in my opinion. And it sounds like you feel the same. I know Ben does too.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is my opinion, but yes, I do think that collaboration is kind of a key to success, especially in an industry where the whole point is to communicate with your audience, whether you're telling a compelling story or you're trying to help your author or your reader with a specific need that they have that your book can fulfill. You're communicating, and that takes, well, more than one person to communicate.
Right.
I can definitely see it being a bit of a balance, because as the author, this is your passion. Like, whatever it is you're writing about, you really are invested in this. And it's okay to have a clear image, a clear goal of what you want to accomplish. Collaboration is really important, because the editor will come in as a professional who will be able to make your vision become more clear, right? If you've got a good editor, that's their job. It's not to show you the editor's vision, but to show the author's vision more clearly. And yeah, sometimes editors miss the mark. It's true. Sometimes, like you said, Michelle, they'll make a suggestion which just doesn't land. So the important thing then is for the author to be able to say, okay, no, I'm not going to take that suggestion, but I am going to think about why you made it and reconsider. And I just have to tell this story. Having been on both sides of this, it is great fun. Michelle, when you and I both worked at Promontory,
Yes.
and you were the editor for one of our authors, won't say their name. They were a mystery author, did 3 or 4 books with us. Not going to say their name, but you might know who I'm talking about. And you'd finished the edit of the first book, and this was her first book, and she's very, very passionate about it, and basically called me up and was just ranting about all the changes that you'd made, right? Because you'd changed her book, and I had to be the publisher and say, no, you've got to understand, Michelle's a professional. She knows what she's doing. You've just got to take her advice, think about it, maybe make some changes, and sort of talked her down and said, this is a collaboration. You've got to be part of it. I finished that call, and then I looked at my emails and got back the manuscript from my editor in New York and started reading it. I'm like, what? How dare you change one word of this genius? I'll kill you. And then realized, oh, wait. Just take a moment, think about it, and maybe be a little collaborative with all this. So literally in the space of 10 minutes, I had to live both sides of it.
Flip that coin.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it can be hard, because, we are very passionate as authors about what we're writing, and it really means a lot to us. So all those authors out there who are maybe a little nervous about working with an editor, just trust me, it's not as scary as you think. And the editor is there to help you. And it's always a good idea to interview an editor beforehand, get to know them a little bit, find out their experience, find out whether you click with them personally. Like if it's possible to have a phone call or a Zoom call, if not, even just the email and just the tone on the email, get a sense of it. And you don't have to take all their suggestions, but it's probably a good idea to listen to them.
It's a great way.
Exactly. Yes, I think that's great advice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything covered, Michelle, about just any pointers or tips for authors on what you would say are like the most important things with working with an editor that they should keep in mind? Anything we might have missed?
I would say the most important thing is that remember that your editor is there to help you. They are the one who is in your corner. They want to see your book succeed. And although when you're looking at those suggestions and they're suggesting, oh, cut that entire paragraph, how can I? Remember that the editor is there not to ruthlessly leave things on the cutting room floor, but to actually help your book become the best book that it can be before it gets out there to the world with your readers.
Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's our show for today, everyone. Michelle, if anyone wants to find you, where could they find you online?
Oh, the best place to find me would be on my website, yournovelexperience.com, because it's all about your experience.
Awesome. Well, I encourage everyone to look up Michelle there, and if you have any questions about editing, please feel to reach out to her. And don't forget to subscribe to our show so you don't miss any of our chats. And feel free to leave a review because it really does help us a lot. You can catch up with Sara at sarahdahlman.com and on Instagram.
And you can find Ben at ben@artcoles.com as well as Facebook and Instagram. Thanks again for joining us today. Please reach out if there are any topics you'd like us to cover, and we'll see you again when we next chat all about writing.
This has been All About Writing with Ben and Sara.